Alright, so I played a game recently called Spellforce 2. I do believe there is a reason this game got a sequel. There are very clear merits and some interesting decisions which might not be found in a Blizzard RTS, but as is, I think that's dragged down quite a bit by a myriad of issues. As far as single player goes. As far as multiplayer goes, I have no idea, but since I've never heard of anyone playing it in multiplayer, I suppose that explains that position. I would recommend playing it even today, although the expansion packs are forgettable and not really offering much more. Play the base game if you enjoy it, go nuts. If not, then expansions are just a worse version of that with some minor additions. What is it about? The Shaikan, the people who are bound by the dragon blood, are assaulted by the armies of the Dark Elves and the Shadows. Their homes are threatened, and even their own power over life itself doesn't save them. And so it's up to the nameless protagonist to ask for help elsewhere, grow in power on the way, and recruit various allies. All the while building strong relationships with kingdoms on our islands. Gist is that it's an RTS with some RPG elements. More in-depth RPG than Warcraft 3, but not quite on the level of something like Diablo or Torchlight, while having a bit of a clunky RTS attached to it. What did I like? I liked having a persistent group which travels around and has gear which can be swapped around and changed. Usually it's just one character, or if it's RPG then it's 4. Here it goes up to 8, but for most of the game the number is between 3 and 6. I wish there were more games doing this sort of thing. It actually really reminds me of CRPGs of old, with real-time combat, but there it was really not my cup of tea. Here I enjoyed it a lot more. It didn't feel as hectic as something like StarCraft 2, but there are quite a few years in between them. At the time I think it was pretty revolutionary, and I'm still yet to see a talent tree in an RTS. I've also liked having a strange world torn by portals. There's no real planet, it's just islands with portals. It's honestly a very lazy idea from a design perspective, but at the same time it's pretty seamless. It felt like this weird world exists with these portals in mind, and people really don't know how to travel without that. Geralt would be very upset to be stuck here. What it also adds is an ability to revisit earlier locations with a bit of metroidvania perspective. So there could be a few new paths opened up, or new quests available, or even enemies just popping up out of somewhere. It felt a lot more like an RPG that way, and made me curious to explore everything instead of just running to the next objective marker. Although I did that too. What did I dislike? The length. The game felt long. I have no idea how long it actually took me, but the later missions just drag on and on and on. The best example is probably the one toward the end in the swamp. Player is controlling the orcs and is tasked with trudging through the swamp to get to the citadel behind it. The paths are long and go around in random patterns. It's a bit like a labyrinth. But the problem is that there are also traps, which one-shot everything. So it was me slowly moving forward with trap spotters and making sure they don't die to whatever enemy is there. Move the army behind the spotters, rinse and repeat. Turns out there was a total of like 5 traps on the entire gigantic map. But I still lost my heroes to it twice. Just as what it took forever. And it feels like all the missions past a certain point just go like that. Just so long, and not really because of the difficulty. And also I dislike the story. At first it was saving the home of a Shaikan. Then, yeah, spoilers. Then it fails and dragon is kidnapped. Humans tell the player to pound sand, so they go to orcs. They run around with orcs for like 30 to 40% of the game, and then like the last 10 or 20% is just the Dark Elves. You might notice that I don't really state any reasons, because I don't know them. It felt like the developers just wanted to show more races and couldn't come up with a good reason, so they just make up something stupid on the spot. Frequently characters go, "Oh no, you did the X, I can't forgive you!" And then in the next few minutes, "Okay, I don't forgive you, but I will help you and fight for you with my life and follow you to the ends of the planet." Yeah, I didn't really feel like there was an actual story past dragon being kidnapped. I was just randomly bouncing around. It was kind of fun, otherwise I won't finish it. But it definitely seemed like the developers were running on fumes and only had gameplay in mind. Even the camera effects and the cutscenes became comedic. But it's not like the gameplay is stellar later on either. There's a strange problem with the path and collision and unit selection. Today we are spoiled by StarCraft 2. It's easy to add to control groups, remove from them, select and build stuff with the hotkeys, etc, etc. I still don't know if there are any hotkeys in Spellforce 2. I used pause and control 1, 2 and so forth. That's it. I don't know if you can even build using the keyboard or cast any spells. I was just clicking all the time. It's so damn clunky. Granted, the gameplay is a little slow, so it wasn't entirely unplayable, but it was a pretty jarring jump from a Blizzard RTS, the pathing. The units frequently go into ballerina mode and do a few spins before going where ordered, which is funny even now as I say it, but it's definitely frustrating. And there is an issue of collision, which was extremely apparent during the Malachi's Labs mission. I was attacking towers with about 2 or 3 melee units. Others were just standing around, hands in their pockets. It was impossible to get any more than that to attack. Nearly always it was just 30% of my melee guys fighting at most. But maybe it's just that mission being so awful with some weird builds and positioning. Other times it wasn't so bad, but it's still something to keep in mind. And I would also like to add that I did try Dragonstorm, and I finished it. So the good is what it offers more Spellforce too. The bad is what it's that the beginning is very rocky. The bad is what the beginning is very rocky, and then there are puzzles and confusing unnecessary crafting and a story which seems to start in the middle with basically no context. I finished it and I still don't really know what it is all about. Also Nightsong. I think she's supposed to be an unimportant character, but there is basically nothing to make her interesting or important. It feels like she joins the group to show that she's still around from Shadow Wars, yet adds absolutely nothing and is almost a hindrance with how weak she is. Just a pretty mascot. So the story and characters are a mess, but I enjoyed the gameplay and the new abilities. Reminded me of playing Blood Death Knight in WoW. Health jumping up and down all the while feeling unkillable. So the end result is a pretty nice game, which I do recommend, but it's jank. A bit less of a good game nowadays, but I'm glad I know about it and finally finished it after stealing a disc from a friend from elementary school. But they stole another game from me first, so it was justified. And now that I think about it, this would have happened more than a decade or two ago. God, I feel old. So, I also played 1. I played both Spellforce 1 and 2, and I played 1 first, just to see how it goes. And I would definitely like to say that there is a lot of good here, and people working on those definitely improved a lot of things. Problem is, there are still plenty of flaws. So, I didn't get too far in Spellforce 1. I'll just come out and say it. Problem arose is that the player is expected to do certain quests and pick up certain items which are pretty easy to miss. So I was stuck, and I had zero idea where to go or what to do. Sounds like I'm being a bit of an entitled gamer here, but it's important to keep in mind that generally when a player is tasked with something, there is at least something telling him what he is missing. Say for example you're trying to escape for joy in Divinity Original Sin 2. It's not an open door for you to walk through, but after walking around and talking to people, certain paths open up and people explain that you can, in fact, escape, even if magistrates are a significant threat. There are clues, there are multiple solutions, there is a lot there, while not really being blatant. Here, it's a bunch of dwarves telling me to pound sand. Why? I don't know. How'd I get in? I don't know. What did I do wrong? I don't know. There is zero way to know. The player is free to teleport around the place, but it's important to keep in mind that walking is slow as hell. The points where a player can teleport are few and far between, and the maps are enormous. And it's not like everything is easily visible. I've missed looted NPCs a few times. I've also missed teleport points, having to track through the entire map. It's all awful. I just give up. I think that it was awfully done. They obfuscated too much and asked from a player to explore every single nook and cranny with a magnifying glass. Maybe at the time it was a groundbreaking and new, but at this point I'd much rather not bother. And Spellforce 2 fixed a lot of that, streamlining everything and adding quest markers everywhere, so yeah, that's why I recommend. So I suggest not playing the first game. I can imagine someone enjoying it after doing a deep dive and paying attention to every single little thing, but it's just too outdated nowadays. The actual game balance is off, there are annoying things I mentioned before, and the RPG elements are extremely bare bones. Also, I played a mage necromancer kind of character, and it's just an extremely weak combination, apparently. That also took a lot of my enjoyment away. And after reading a few posts about the game, apparently the most dumb build of brute force fighter is completely overpowered and essentially wins the entire map without playing the RTS component at all. Yeah, that sounds fun.